following message is transmitted.
Welcome back to the Order of Chaos podcast. Today, my guest is Olivia, the Witch of Wonderlust. Olivia is a prolific YouTuber in the occult and witchcraft spaces, and she creates really thoughtful and intriguing videos on magic, the nature of magic, and how to use it in everyday life. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, so I've got a bunch of questions for you. And this first one, I want to hear your perspective on it.
Okay.
To you, what is magic and what is its purpose?
Oh, that's a good question. We're going to hop right into the deep end. What is magic and what is its purpose? I think magic, I don't really think that there's like a specific purpose. Like, I don't feel like, I don't really think that there's like a purpose of life. I just think that it's just existing, right? Like, it's just to be. The purpose is to be. And I think magic is just a part of this ecosystem that we're in. I mean, if you look, scientifically, we have the ecosystem of the planet. We have the ecosystem of micro ecosystems wherever we're living in different areas of the world. And all of those ecosystems function the way that they function. There's no like sentient thing that's like causing it to be like, okay, well, now that this thing died, now I need all of the decomposers to come by and like eat this dead thing and then kind of put that back into the earth. Like, there's nothing that's directing all of it. It just is, right? And I think magic is just an energetic version of that. It's just something that is a natural part of our ecosystem that I just don't think we fully have like a scientific understanding of. So then that's where the occultists come in, where we're just batshit crazy, fucking around and finding out. And, but at the end of the day, it's like, why has it been around for so long and so many things have worked, Yeah. I just think that we don't have like a full understanding. I think it's just much more complex than we really understand right now. But that's what I think magic is. I think it's just it's just a part of our current ecosystem.
Yeah. I often tell people, I do love talking about the scientific aspects of magic as much as we can to describe what's happening, but it's arrogant and silly to think that you've like nailed it. Like, I've got it. I know what it is.
Yeah.
It's like if we found a power tool in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Like, you can use it, but don't know what it is or how it works. Do you think that there will ever be a point where we do fully understand it as a science?
I don't know, because I mean, even science we don't fully understand, and I feel like we're as modern and as caught up as we possibly can be right now, but that doesn't mean that we by any means fully understand everything, and even the things that we think that we fully understand, but one minor discovery could completely change the whole understanding of what we already know scientifically. So it's like, if I don't even fully trust that we know everything in science, there's no way.
And we don't.
No.
We don't actually know how electricity flows through wires, for example.
Really? I didn't know that.
No, we don't know. The best theory is called the bump theory, but we don't know. And all the textbooks you'll read as you're learning to be an electrician will say we don't know.
Huh. But I mean, but we understand how to direct it. But so there's like that disconnect there. I think it's kind of similar. Do I ever think that we're ever going to get to a place that we fully understand it? We can't even get to a place that we can like have full compassion for other people. So I'm not 100% sure. So I don't know. I would love to think so, but then what?
Yeah.
Exactly. Then what?
Then what?
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of think the world is more fun with a lot of mystery to it.
Me too.
and that's one of the reasons why your name is so cool. And for people who aren't paying attention, it's not Wanderlust, it's Wonderlust, which, that was clever.
Thanks. That was the point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, that sense of wonder and mystery is something that I grew up with, that I cherish possibly more than anything. Knowing too much, not to say like that you can know too much or that knowing too much is harmful, but sometimes it sucks the fun out of things.
Yeah, it takes those rose-colored glasses off, and
Mhm.
like but I think that's the fun part of kind of understanding and fully coming to acceptance, and not only acceptance, but like excitement that you're never going to know everything.
Yeah.
Like the sense of curiosity is something that I value so much in people, and like that I value in myself, because it's like even things that we have every single day, like you said, like we don't even know, like electricity, you're like, that's something that we use every single day.
Runs the whole world.
Yeah, and we're like, I don't actually really know what the fuck like it's like,
Mhm.
how that's insane to me. And I mean, there's so many different little things of even just like how the world works, how your culture works, how things have like it's just so layered that there's never going to be things that you just stop learning about. It's just going to continue, which I think is a lot of fun. I don't think that that's a bad thing at all. Even if you're super super smart, there's no way that you're going to be able to know everything there is possibly to know.
Yeah, no way. No way. And one thing that I believe is that the one of the principal axioms of chaos magic, and I'm a chaos magician, sort of. I don't know what I am. But one of the principal axioms of chaos magic is nothing is true, everything is permitted. And the way I've chosen to reframe that for myself is that your experience of reality will ultimately conform to your beliefs about it. So if your beliefs about reality are completely different than this other person's beliefs of reality, you're in different realities. You're in a shared space, but different realities. Your perspective creates everything.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, perspective is such a you can have two people living the same life but having completely different perspectives, and that's going to change the course of their lives, and how not valuable, like enriched and full their lives are, because it's like somebody could have my life and be like, this sucks. But like, which like that's fair. It's not for everybody, but at the same time, like there's so many good things about it. And it's like, am I rich? Absolutely not. But like I have enough money to pay my bills and, sometimes like go out and get coffee or like have a drink with some friends or whatever. And I feel like that's great. And I can support my hobbies. Like that's fantastic for me. Whereas some people might be like, you know what? You're not rich and this sucks. Like you thrift, disgusting.
Yeah, and it depends on your circumstances and all these different
Totally.
factors, right? And it's so unique and individual to the person. There's no mold that fits everybody for anything.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I think magic across the board will remind you. As soon as you start getting into it, it reminds you that it's personal and that this is for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think that's why so many systems, like why when they're so rigid, it kind of like, what's the point of it? Like am I really like doing anything that's worthwhile if like I'm following this like very rigid sense of magic, or this rigid like practice that you can't go outside it, you can't change any words of the rites, you can't use any other tool except for this specific thing, and it has to be this color and this shape and what, it's like, so there's no fun in that. Like I don't connect to those things, so I'm not going to do them.
Yeah, and I fully agree with you, like completely. And my style of magic is, the more I personalize it, the more potent it becomes, the more it's a reflection of me, the more that I feel empowered by it and that I feel like it's really working in the world. But at the same time, I have a few friends who are like, I have my oldest closest friend is devoutly Buddhist. One of my other closest friends is devoutly Muslim, and I've got friends in the occult space who are devoutly they're Thelemites. Is that the correct way to say it?
Elements, yeah.
Yeah. So for them, whatever activates that sense of excitement in you and I about doing it our way, for them, it's like, am I doing it the right way? And like that's valid. That's totally cool.
Yeah.
It's just that I am so ADHD, I could never do that.
That's fair. Well, and I think those like the people who find joy in having like that very strict system, it's almost the way that I see it is that instead of them seeing that it's like personalized into them, it's like they are a small piece of something so much bigger.
Yeah.
You know, which like I also think is valid, but for me, I'm kind of just like a wackadoodle and I just want to do whatever the fuck. I have an issue with authority, you know, I'm like, nah.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. I was a skateboarder when I was a kid. I'll never, you know. Okay, so how have you how has your practice developed over the years, and how have you made it a part of your everyday
Oh my God. Okay, so strap in. So it's developed in wild ways because I mean I've always I'm sure like most practitioners, especially folk practitioners, they look back and it's like, oh, I've always been practicing magic. I just didn't realize that that's what I was doing, type of
life?
thing. You know, like almost all kids, I was making potions in the woods and you know making like dolls out of sticks and just whatever I wanted, and I would get really connected to these things that I made and I would use them in certain ways. Like if I had, you know, like a potion or whatever, like maybe I'd like smear it on like a doorway and I'd be like, it's for luck. And it's like, I don't know what you know, like I'm like 8, I don't know what I'm doing, but like I'm doing my best, right? And then I also grew up in a very Christian household. It was very Catholic based, but so my dad's Filipino, and so like that comes from like a heavy like Catholic background, and so but my mom was heavily Christian, so they kind of just like met in the middle somewhere and was like, okay, we're just gonna, you know, mix it up a little bit. So it was like Baptist for a while, I don't know, whatever. So growing up I was kind of like, okay, well, I guess it's God that I'm talking to, question mark. Like even though I'm not really talking to anybody, I guess like that's the person who's like pulling all the strings, not me. Which I was like, I don't know, I don't really feel like that's the thing, but that's what I was taught. So I believed that for a while. And then later, as I started to grow up, maybe around like 10 or 11, I was like, you know, I don't really think it's God. Like, I didn't really know what to call it. I was still trying to figure it out. And so I started still practicing and like doing, again, what I wouldn't have called spells at the time or like divination at the time. But I started doing a lot of that. And if I like not caught, but like if I were to for some reason have it come up in conversation or whatever, like it was I would cover it up with like, oh well, I'm talking to saints, or like, you know, like I try to cover it up with like I'm totally still Christian. I'm totally Christian, you know, all through high school. And then probably towards the end of high school, I was like, yeah, I'm lying to myself. I'm not Christian. You know, like everything that I'm doing is like completely opposite. And like, I'm just trying to justify these things when like literally the Bible says I shouldn't be doing certain thing, whatever. And so, I kind of just like dropped off that. I stopped calling myself Christian. And then I wasn't really open until I was I don't know, 18 or 19. And all of a sudden my practice changed drastically, like because once I had that ability to be super open, because I was living with people at the time, so I was like hiding things, and then finally I was like, you know what, fuck it, like this is what I'm doing, and they were like, oh, okay. And so, you know, they were chill with it, and I was able to experiment a lot more openly, which was really freeing. And then I started my channel, and I think diving into the internet, which was interesting because I wasn't really on the internet for spirituality or witchcraft for a very long time. Even though I had it at access, I kind of felt like fully alone for a very long time. So when I started my channel, I was like, oh shit, there's like a ton of other people out here doing this. You know, like I was like, oh my God, I found my people. And so I started my YouTube channel, and I started finding all these like fantastic people and getting mentors that were not spirits, and getting, you know, like getting more just like different perspectives and different understandings of cultures and practices and ways to integrate that into your life. And so I think my YouTube channel actually had like a huge impact on my craft just exponentially growing. And then a big shift was because so I'm very folk based and like seasonal based, and I like to work with the things that I've got. and so Jason Miller reached out a couple years in after I did my YouTube. And so I started doing his Sorcery of Hecate course, which is a completely different realm of magic that I had ever done. It's
He's
very,
brilliant.
huh?
He's brilliant.
He's fantastic. Like I had read a couple of his books, so when he reached out, I was like, oh my fucking God, he knows who I am. And so I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, I'll let you drop in and see how it goes. And I was like, holy shit. And completely different form of magic I've ever done in my life. Very ceremonial, very like visualizing based. I've also never worked with deities up until that point, and I'm still not much of a deity person, but like that was just a completely different thing. And so it completely shifted, or it half validated and half gave me a better understanding of how magic worked, or how I could apply certain things that I learned from that into my own practice. And again, exponential, I saw so much growth out of that. And what was the last one? Oh, you asked how I implement magic into my everyday life. It's subtle. I think that's one of the things that people like get frustrated with me and like my content is that people are like, I want to see all the rituals and the spells, and then I'm like, you're seeing them. You just don't know it.
Yep.
You know, like you see them all the time. You like if you're looking at my face, you see some of my magic right here.
Yeah. I gotta do a whole episode on magical bling. It's important.
Yeah, you should. You totally should. And it's like I've shown you how to charm jewelry. I'm just not showing you how I'm charming how to charm each single one, and you're mad about that. You know, like I'm not gonna do that because what's the point in me teaching you something or showing you how to do something when I'm not actually teaching you how to do it for yourself? The whole point of being a teacher is so that you don't need me eventually. And
Yep.
so, or like in my tea or coffees, you know, like you stir it a certain way. Sometimes I'll add some cinnamon for some speed or luck or prosperity. Sometimes it's clove for protection, whatever. If I cook, which I don't do often, but when I do, you know, I'll add a little witchery in there, or like a little bit of Florida water on the forehead and the back, or I'll pull a card if I'm like, oh God, I know I have to meet with like some people that I like don't love. So I'll just like pull a card and be like, all right, what kind of vibe is this going to be like, to know what kind of protections I'm bringing in? It's like, it's not, I think people want me to like show up in a robe and like start calling the corners. And I'm like, I don't do that. You know, like you're seeing my magic in my vlogs, you're seeing my magic, but you expect it to look different.
Yes.
So yeah.
People expect it to look different, and that expectation is setting them up for failure because that's not what real magic looks like. I mean, maybe
Right.
it does to a few people, but it's not as common, right? And if you're going to really incorporate magic into your everyday life, well, I mean, unless you live in like a lodge, or you're a 33,000 degree Freemason or whatever, that's not everyday life. Like
Right.
that's fantasy, and you really love that fantasy, and I get it, and you want to live it, but you and I and other people we know, like we're living it, and we all have jobs and shit too, and we have things to do, and like
Well, and I don't think people fully understand like how exhausting a lot of these rituals are. Like even I renew a lot of my protections and my wards on new moons. And it's like to most people, it's like, oh, it's like every month, whatever. But honestly, in like the first few months, you're like excited, especially when you're like a newer practitioner. You're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like do my do my protections, whatever. And then you set it up, and then like a year down the road to you're like, oh fuck, it's a new moon. I do not have the energy or the time to like and it's like the times, and of course I have skipped out on a couple of times and I've paid for that, but like it's still annoying because it feels like homework, like it's funny because like they have it like, oh my God, I'm gonna set up these candles and do these whole rituals, and it's like, yeah, I guess that's fun like sometimes when you're really feeling it, but it's like the Hecate course, for example, it's a lot, and it's every single day,
yeah.
every single day. And even just like the bare minimum that he's asks for, there's days that I'm like, I don't want to do this. What I want to do is sit on my couch in nothing but my fucking underwear and watch YouTube. I don't want to like sit down and at my altar and do a thing because I have to, or because like, but you do, like if once you make that commitment, especially when it's a spirit contract, like
Yeah.
you gotta do it. And so it's funny that people are like romanticize this thing and then forget that like it's work. Like it's a lot of work. So
it's a lot of work, and depending on which deities you're working with, this can backfire. Like it really can. I had, so I'm not going to get super into this right now. But I'll say that I had made a commitment to Odin. I broke that commitment and I paid for it. Don't fuck around.
Yeah.
Fuck around and find out.
It's the spirit contracts of any kind, like if you're telling that spirit, like, hey, if you help me out with X, Y, and Z, I'll give you these offerings in return, whether it's a one-time thing or until you decide that this contract is broken. Like you can't just not.
Yeah.
That's like being hired for a job, right? And then they're like, okay, well, meet me at this place at this time every single month. And you're like, okay, you can't just not show up.
Yeah.
How is that? Like that person's gonna be like, what the like disrespect, right? And that's not gonna be taken well. So I don't know. I think it's just a lot more discipline and a lot more energy, a lot more time, and a lot more work than I think people want it to be. But again, if it's your everyday life, like don't make spirit contracts if that's not your thing. That's fine. It has to be integrated into like what you already do. And I think that's like a really big that's a big thing of like people try to make their life what they think it should be as witchy instead of have their life and implement the witchiness into it.
Yeah.
There
are only two things that I ask my students to do consistently every day. And I already understand because I fail to do these things every single day. I do them, I would say minimum 6 days a week. I miss a couple of days a month for sure.
Yep.
But the only things I ask them to do consistently are keep a journal. And in part of that journal, make sure that every single day you know what sign and phase the moon is in. And it's not arbitrary. It's because it informs you as to what's going on around you, right? And connects you to the magical world in, a way that's both aesthetic and functional. And, it's great.
Yeah.
That, and, now that we've started the tarot course in my school, now I'm also going to be asking that they, at least 3 days a week, draw a tarot card, especially while you're learning the tarot.
Right.
But that's it. And that right there, that's a lot to ask of a person.
Yeah. Well, especially when people are working multiple jobs and when you have like, like you're still upkeeping like a social life, at least if you're trying, or like it's a lot. Even just being like, oh, I'm going to pull a card a day. It doesn't sound like a lot, but then when you like have to implement it, all of a sudden you're like, fuck, I have to pull it. And then if I don't know it, I have to look it up and then I have to like figure out how to apply it. It's like, it's a lot of mental energy. And I don't think that it's like, that's fully talked about a lot. Which if that's what you want, like if you want to grow in a skill, you have to dedicate time to it. There's no other way to do so, but you have to. And I don't know, I think practical magic is really like it. People don't people don't want what it actually is. They want what they think it looks like. And it's so sad because practical magic is like the best way to make your life witchy and to practice magic and to figure out how to apply it and like make changes in your life.
Yeah. One of the things that I think deters people maybe or puts them on a road towards giving up, and I know because it's happened to me. There's times when your magic will do something incredible. Okay, one of my absolute favorite things that I've ever done with magic is that every single time I get into my car, I say in my head, I do my spell, and it's that I do not consent to interact with any archons, police officers, or agents of black magic today. And that's just my way of insulting the fucking cops. It's phrasing it that way. But I do that, and then I push out my energetic field so that it goes as far as I can imagine it going, right? And I have not been pulled over one fucking time since I started doing that. And prior to that, because I was broke as fuck, I was a single dad, I was working like two different like I was a handyman and a photographer. I didn't have like a stable job. I was just trying to make it and keep my kid fed. So my registration was like a year past due. So I was terrified to even get in my car because they could smell me like sharks smell blood in the ocean. But then I started doing this spell. And since I started doing that spell, right? And this is the same car, There was a time that when I pulled up to a red light and there was a cop next to me and one behind me. And I'm like, oh, this is it. This is it. Oh, I'm gonna owe so much money. Nothing. I just kept on going. They didn't see me.
Well, that's going in my arsenal. I'm just gonna write that down if you don't mind me.
No, take it. Everybody use this one. Fuck the
Yeah.
police. But so there's effects like that magic can have where you're like, holy shit, this is incredible. This is changing my life. And then there's magic where all that really happens is that it shifts your perspective just enough for you to consider something that you might not have considered otherwise. And then the rest is completely on you to act on that, to think about it, to move in that direction. Magic won't do it all for you.
Oh my God, that part. I don't know why everybody's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna cast a spell and then I just sit back and do fucking bro. That's that's not how that works. Like it is wild to me that a lot of people out there think that like magic's gonna be doing the heavy lifting for you, when in reality, it's really just an extra tool for you to use. If you know how to use it well, then like yeah, you can use it well. But if you're expecting magic to do all of the work, if you're expecting the spirits to do all of the work, there is no way. I don't know who or where I heard this from, but one of my favorite analogies for magic is that it works like water. It's just going to take the easiest route. It's going to get in all the little crevices, and it's just going to take the easiest route from point A to point B. It's not going to fill the room. It's not going to fill the container. It's not going to like whip around everywhere in the air. It's just going to get from where you started and to where you asked the easiest way.
Yeah.
And if there's a blockage, then it can't get there, so it's like, I don't know. I think there has to be some sort of understanding of like, once you practice magic and you see results, whether they be good results or not, once you see them, you have a better understanding of like, oh, okay, so that's why that went wrong, or that's why that took more time. For example, like I did a banishing for somebody who lived near me because they're not a good person. And I was like, you're gonna go away. And so I did a banishing, and like they were living here. They were fully like, they grew up here and everything. And 5 months. So again, like if I'm expecting this to happen in the next week for them just to leave, like there's no way realistically, because it's part of this ecosystem, and magic is not magic like in the movies where it defies the rules that we have. It has to work within the rules, right? Like
yes.
It works within the ecosystem. That's just the way that works. So it took 5 to 6 months, but all of a sudden they moved to the other side of the country.
That's
so
fantastic.
like, yeah. And so, but like it took a while, and so, but that's so hasty as well with somebody who wasn't planning on moving, or like somebody who wasn't talking about planning on moving or going anywhere, doing anything. Like all of a sudden they just up and moved.
Yeah, it's incredibly fast.
Yeah, exactly.
5 or 6 months is great. That's amazing.
That is fantastic timing for me. But I do think a lot of people are like, all right, let's see if they start talking about wanting to move in the next month. And you're like, that's not how that's going to work. You can't just like light a candle and hope and be like, all right, it's done.
Yeah. And so that expectation is, that is something that people can work on over time, and as you get better at magic, the expectation that you're going to move objects with your mind, that one drives me bonkers. Because if anybody could, like, people have asked me if I can teach them that. I'm like, if you think if I could do that, that I'd be like here talking to you,
right?
I'd be, I'd be so far away. I'd be levitating.
Yeah, I'd be Chris Angel, bro. Like I'd be making that money.
Yeah,
if I could do that.
Yeah, so people getting past that, I think, is one of the first steps. Another one, a big one, is to incorporate magic into your everyday life. If let's say you weren't a goth kid in high school, let's say you were not in the drama club or just, a musician or one of the weirdos, right? And I went to a high school composed entirely of weirdos. I was very lucky because I went to high school in the hills of Santa Cruz, California, where like everybody's a hippie. But even at that school, there was still like the jocks and the weirdos, right? So if you really want to get good at magic, you have to get past feeling silly.
Yes.
That's a big one.
Yeah. That's such a funny. I was just talking to somebody yesterday who like it was the first time I was meeting them, and they were like, "Well, do you like believe that it works?" And I was like, "Honestly, I have no fucking clue." I was like, I feel batshit crazy all the time. Like when I'm like pulling my cards, I'm like, I'm literally asking like a deck of paper for
Yeah.
destiny. You know, like I'm very hyper aware of how wild this is. Like it's but you know what? If I get results, I get results. I think that's one of the things that, at least in my experience, I don't really actually have to believe that this thing is working for it to work. You know,
No,
like if
I mean, yeah, you put your faith into it, you know?
yeah, like I don't know. There's been spells that I'm like, this is crazy. I am batshit. And I like, I'm like doing the thing and like, and I still know that I'm like sending my energy. So I think, like I'm still doing that, but that doesn't mean that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get some actual results from this. Honestly, that banishing spell, I was like, I'm doing this because it's cathartic.
Yeah. But
Like
it's that catharsis though. It's that output of energy that does
exactly.
the thing.
That's the thing though, is but I wasn't doing it like fully believing
Yeah.
that they were gonna leave. That was not like my thing of like, oh yeah, like I know that this is gonna work. I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Honestly, I'm just putting shit in this poppet and I'm being like, fuck you, bro, and throwing it in a nasty area. Like that's that, and like just get the fuck out. And it was cathartic. And then when they left, I was like, oh hey,
Yeah.
cool. Um, so I think it's like a weird thing of you're just gonna feel crazy.
Yeah.
You're gonna feel like you have no idea what you're going on. I've been doing this over a decade and I still feel batshit crazy. But like that's kind of the fun of it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of part of the fun because then you continue get to like have this childlike wonder of like, oh, I'm doing this thing. And even if like you can just play around with it. And I think that's the fun part. Like there's no reason to make it so serious that you just can't have fun with it and like think that you're this all powerful. I don't know. It's don't get it doing too in your head about it. I feel like is a really good place to start, especially with new
There's
people.
yeah, there's okay, so there's different avenues to achieve, in my opinion, different avenues to achieve exactly what you were just saying. Okay. Um, you can either let go of your requirement for it to work because that so here's the way I phrase this to people. Okay. Insistence equals resistance, and whatever you resist will persist. So if you insist that your spell has to work a certain way, you're actually working against it.
That's true.
Right. So the way you were saying, like, hey, I'm not gonna do that. Right. That's one way of making it work is to let you, because you're letting go of that insistence by not like believing. Right. This is tricky because you have to do like mental gymnastics. That's a huge part of magic. The way that I do it to achieve the same effect is like I believe fully in what I'm going to do, but once I'm done doing a spell, like I don't think about it at all anymore. I'm done with it. It's over. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm moving on with my life.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
It's odd too. I mean, like it's yeah, it's really weird because it's almost like once you do that spell, I think if you're still thinking about it, you didn't put all that energy into it.
right?
Like I think that because I've done that where I'm like, oh, I want this so bad, and then I put that spell in there, and then I just keep thinking about it, like how is it going to
Mhm.
manifest? How are they going to do this? And I'm like looking around for the results, and I never get them. Or if I do, they're either not that great or they suck.
Yeah,
um,
totally.
but in reality, it's like when I know that I like what we like to use at my pole studio. If you put your whole pussy into it, you like you like put everything that you have into it of like if you're so angry, you're so happy, whatever, like you want this so bad, you put everything into it and it almost exhausts that energy, that mental energy of you thinking about it all the time. You put
Yes.
it in that and then you like kind of naturally just don't think about it, like you have put all of that energy and then you like let it go and then all of a sudden it pops up and you're like, oh shit, hey, I think that was me, like
Yeah. So, so the way that I would describe magic, and this kind of just came to me, which is relevant because I'm writing a book, so now this is going to go in there. So thank you.
Oh,
But like, you gather up this energy that becomes thoughts, and your thoughts can become obsessive. And when you're having obsessive thoughts, no matter what it is, good, bad, whatever, it takes up a lot of your mental space. And those thoughts build up in you. And magic is a way of like condensing them into something and then getting rid of it, and then hopefully, like the way I would describe this is that you're utilizing the butterfly effect, right? Not in a physical way. Like we all know the idea of butterfly flaps its wings and causes a hurricane. Well, what do thoughts cause, right? What do projectile thoughts cause? So if you can take all the energy and ball it up into something that's projectile and then just get rid of it in a ritualistic manner or through a sigil or candle or whatever it is that you do to have that cathartic moment, and you send that energy out into the ether, number one, it allows you to like be calm again. It resets your nervous system, right? And number two, hopefully it goes somewhere and does something.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's precisely, exactly. You put it into like a nice little condensed.
Well,
Pretty
yeah.
well.
Thank you for helping me kind of picture that in my mind. It's hard to describe,
It is a very hard. I mean, magic and witchcraft and everything, it's so hard to describe. Like it's so funny when you meet people who like, are interested in knowing more about it, but then they're like, okay, so like what is magic? What's your practice? Like they ask all these like vague questions, and it's just you're like, well, I have to explain 10 things for you to understand this one thing, and then this one thing explains like you're like you can't, you have to start it somewhere like so niche that you really can't like fully explain everything, especially not in one sitting. But again, that's part of the fun, right?
Yeah. And it also, if you're talking to somebody whose belief system is even slightly different than yours, there's things that won't add up for them.
Yeah.
And that's fine, right? And like part of becoming a magician is understanding that your beliefs are yours and they're not objective. One of the things that I notice about most people, and I don't mean this to be insulting towards people in any way, shape, or form. It's just, this used to be me also. Most people can't tell the difference between a fact and a deeply held belief. There's no line there. They cannot accept that what they believe might not be true.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm also very guilty of that as well.
Yeah. But that's the function of beliefs, right? It takes a lot to believe that your beliefs could be wrong and to be very comfortable with that. Right. But
I mean, who was it? It was Allie from the Bronx Witch. She said something really that I absolutely loved when I was talking to her. She said, I like to treat all of my current beliefs as like experiments or placeholders. So like they're just, like they're I believe this for now, and it's always like that, like that ellipses that's like, oh yeah, I believe this for now until otherwise, until further notice, until something comes along and either changes my mind or changes my perspective or proves me wrong, and I think having that openness of being like, oh shit, well, I was wrong this whole time, okay, instead of white knuckling to this belief, being able to be fluid and transform in your beliefs, I think is a really important lesson, which I think all of us are just continuously learning. There's definitely things that I white knuckle, so easier said than done for sure.
Yeah, and it's the beliefs that like form your identity are the ones that are really hard. No matter how much that you could be wrong, there's still a component of you that's like, no, hey, don't challenge that belief, and that's fine. That's just like being human. And also all this stuff, like it's really cool that you and I are not in institutions, because this shit can drive you crazy, like thinking about your thoughts and about your beliefs and then analyzing all of it and then putting it in a magical context.
Or when you get into like spirit work and like, like it's like, and especially like when you deep dive into that shit, like when you start hearing things, seeing things, scrying and seeing shit that you're like, I didn't need to see that, like things like that. Or then you start like doing divination or you speaking to spirits and then like things start kind of all adding up and then you like fully believe in I don't know, like that you can, it's, you walk a very fine line in letting yourself go insane with these things. And yeah, I agree. I'm glad that we're not, you know,
Yeah.
needing professional help. Maybe we do, and we're just saying that we don't, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, I personally think everybody can benefit from therapy in one way
Oh
or
yeah,
another, like the whole human race.
definitely.
But still, this is a lot. We're lucky we live in an age where the language exists to even have these kinds of thoughts.
Yes, definitely agree.
Okay. Okay. Next big question I have for you.
Okay.
It's two parts. What is the most positive experience you've ever had with magic and the most negative?
Ooh. Oh, okay. Let's see. Oh, I gotta pick one. There's okay, positive. Positive. I think positive wise that I'm in my current situation because I like those are just, this is just an accumulation of so many spells that I've done of like I work independently. I get to create, like for my job I get to be creative and that is fucking insane.
Yeah.
I'm dating the love of my life that I had a crush on for like 12 years and didn't do anything about. But
That's
like,
awesome. I mean, that's huge. That's what most people want out of magic, is exactly that.
yeah, like I have everything that I could possibly want. Am I like rolling around in money and what, like no, whatever. But like I have like 12 friends that they're my village, like they are my ride or die. I love them so much and I know that they love, like, and that as an adult especially, that is
Mhm.
not something that most people can say, but I have like a really good set of friends. I live in a nice place. I am with the love of my life. I get to do what I love to do as my job. Like, what else could I ask for? Like, I have a really good life and like this, I truly believe that this was an accumulation of a lot of the spells that I've done. Like if I look back in all of my journals, and I've journaled a long time, all of them are basically like, oh, I want to like, date this person. I want to have a cute house. I want to be able to like be openly witchy and like do things and be creative all the time and get to try, like I have
Yeah.
everything.
All the
So like
things.
that's my best thing with magic, despite the fact that I can't tell you like one little spell that, whatever.
No, but that's
Um,
better because that's to me, that's what magic is about. It's about improving your
yes.
life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
The whole
exactly.
thing, not just one aspect of it. You improve your whole life.
Exactly. And I'm definitely this is like controversial depending on morals, but like I'm definitely somebody who meddles in my friends' lives. They know about it. They know about it. And a lot of them like don't really believe in anything. So I'm like, well, can I do this? And they're like, yeah, sure. And then like, something will happen and they're like, coincidence? And I'm like, yeah, yeah. But I'll meddle, but mostly like meddling as in like, oh, I'm gonna send so that you can get this job, or like make sure that like I want to make sure that my friends are taken care of.
Yeah.
Negative. I'm trying to think of the most um so I'm really, and I don't think I've learned my lesson because I'll still do it. I'm really reckless with like clarity and truth spells. Those are me.
Ooh.
And like whether you're doing it for yourself or anything, or like run devil run spells, like when you weed out people, you start seeing, you're like, oh wow, you're a bad person. One of my mentors was she has this truth serum oil, and she suggested one time to me, she's like, wear that on your hands and go to a wedding.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no.
I usually only do that with like weddings that like I'm not like close to anybody there, but holy shit, like the lore that you get, because you wear that, you like shake people's hands, whatever, and then they just tell you everything about the bride, the groom, the bachelorette part, whatever, like family stuff, and you're like, good God. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, truth spells, clarity spells are usually the ones that bite me in the ass the most. I mean, granted, I would say that I'm thankful down the line so that I don't have like those toxic people in my life longer. But shit sucks. Oh, when I was a kid, I did a binding spell. What I feel like that's self-explanatory. And then I obviously like you don't like keep it as a kid because you don't think you're ever gonna have to undo it. So you like bury it somewhere you're not gonna so you can't really undo it. There's no undoing. You just kind of have to like fix it along as you go.
Hmm.
Yeah, like so I've done a lot of
Yeah.
dumb shit. I've had to clean up a lot of messes.
That's a really interesting point you bring up. Okay. I've struggled with this as well. Undoing magic is very difficult. Once you've done it, it's done.
Yeah.
I feel that I, through my own, not knowing what I was doing, and I really shouldn't have written this shit down. I really shouldn't have. But I kept a journal when I was like a really depressed teenager, and I wrote some awful things in it. And I think that I cursed myself a number of times, and I've had to work very hard to undo that. Now that I understand what I did,
Yeah.
undoing it is still difficult.
Yeah, it's so hard. And I think there's all these things of like, well, how do you undo the spell just in case? It's like you don't.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, there's very specific spells that are made to be undone, but most you don't. There's not like you shouldn't really have a reason to undo it. If you're going to do it in the first place, why are you going to want to undo it like in that same moment that you're doing it? That doesn't that like something's not computing there. So yeah, I agree. Like undoing spells is really, 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 really hard because most of the time it's not undoing it. You kind of have to, it's like when you're doing a painting or something and you fuck up the painting, you can't just erase it, right? Like you have to go back in and paint over it and fix your mistake. You can't like scrape it off because that's still ruining the painting. Like so you don't have an eraser, you have a Sharpie.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, I've done a lot of work to cover up the things that I did when I was a kid,
Yeah.
not to, I guess cover up's not the right word, but to override
Yeah.
the spells I put on myself unintentionally through much more intentional magic. But I mean, it takes so much because once it's done, it really is done. And you can't undo it, but you can redo it, I suppose. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why I think no matter what you believe, no matter what, it's so important to be careful with your self-talk.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is for everybody in the world, regardless if they practice magic or not. Just be careful about how you talk to yourself. Be your own biggest fan. It's so important. And I know a lot of people don't have that, but it's one of the things I got out of magic that I think like saved my life. And there's a number of ways I would say that magic saved my life. That's the biggest one.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think self-talk is a huge, huge factor of a lot of things. It bleeds into everything that you have.
Yeah. And it bleeds into your spell work, and it becomes, if you're not a magician. So the way that I describe this is the difference between the fool and the magician, right? Is like the biggest step you could ever take in your life, because the fool believes that life is happening to them, that they're a victim of all the things that are happening to them. Not necessarily a victim, but it's not in their control, and like life is happening to me. I'm independent of reality and I'm just here in it, and whatever happens, happens. The magician understands I'm causing all of this. I am the cause of my entire reality. So once you go from the fool to the magician, you're like, oh fuck, what have I done?
Yeah. Yeah.
In so
Yep.
many ways.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the hardest parts about starting so young too, and like not having anybody to kind of mentor you through is like there's so many things you don't realize that you're like actually accidentally fucking up. Whereas like I think it's funny that like so many people when they start so much later in life, they're like, oh, I feel like I'm so behind. It's like, well, no, because you have like a better understanding of you as a person and life and like how just like systems work. And so that is already like a step up above a child practicing magic.
Oh yeah, and there are aspects of magic that are truly dangerous too. That I'm really grateful that the average age of the students in my course it's 35 to 60. We have a
Wow.
few younger people, but I'm grateful for that because I don't have to hide things from them. You
Mhm.
know, but if you're 17, don't don't touch the Goetia. Don't do that. Please. You know, you're not because your brain isn't developed enough yet,
Right.
essentially, to contain those to actually like deal with those energies.
Yeah.
Um, and that's true for lots of darker or infernal
Heavier.
death type entities. Don't go messing with that stuff if you can't emotionally handle it.
Yeah. Well, I just filmed a video about working in cemeteries and well, I mean like gaining relationships with the dead. And like that's such a hard I want really badly to like talk a little more about like intermediate things on my channel, but I just feel like it's so irresponsible because I know that so much of my audience, I mean, my audience is like very, very um diverse in age, but a lot of my audience, like I have 12-year-olds watching,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like I'm not gonna be like, yeah, go talk to the cemetery guardians and like, go work with death. Like I'm not gonna tell you that because
No.
at 12 you shouldn't be doing that. You should be like connecting to plant spirits, like that's what I think you should be doing at 12.
Yeah.
I just so it's hard because like just responsibly I feel like posting anything heavier is so irresponsible as a creator that I know that I have a really young audience as well.
Yeah. No, and you're dead on correct, and I commend you for not doing that. Right? Because you need to if you are going to do that, you got to put it behind a paywall or something, not for whatever reason, but just so you know who you're talking to specifically.
Exactly. Well, and it's like I most likely 12-year olds don't have the money to like put on their credit card and
Yeah.
like, have a monthly payment to Patreon. So it's like most likely I'm being a little more responsible talking about, like my bindings and like the banishing spells and the curse and the hexes on my Patreon. But like I just don't want to do that. Because also like you're 12, like the people that you're hexing for the most part, not always, but for the most part, like you don't need to be doing that. Like you feel a lot of big feelings when you're a preteen and a teen. So I don't think anybody really needs that hex.
No, it is important as a practitioner to know how to hex and how hexes work.
Yes.
But I've performed one hex in my entire life. I've never felt a need otherwise. I just don't. I'm not a revenge driven person. I'm more a leave
Yeah.
me the fuck alone. Like I'm gonna do a banishing. I'm not gonna do a hex. You
Same.
know.
Well, and again, like I think hexes, people feel so powerful, like, oh, I can hex you or whatever. Like it's like this threat, like it's kind of like somebody being like, well, I know jujitsu, and it's like, okay, like, yeah, okay, like back it up. But it's also again, it's so much work, and hexes are messy.
Mhm.
I don't want to clean that shit up energetically or like actually doing it. Like it's a fucking mess, and then you have to like get rid of it somewhere in the middle of nowhere, like whatever. Like there's just so much work, and there's so much work and time and energy spent into like hexing as one person that like it's just not worth all of that. Most of the
Yeah.
time, it's not worth all of that. So
So what topics would you recommend then? So um what do you think forms a good foundation of magic for a person who how should they spend the first year?
like if they're like, okay, I'm gonna start right now.
Yeah.
Ooh. Well, first of all, I would tell them to evaluate what they want out of it. Like, why are you wanting to practice magic in the first place? What interests you about it? Because like that, I think is going to shape your whole entire practice and your foundations. Because your foundations are going to look different. Some people are foundations in astrology and others are in plant magic, things like that.
Mhm.
Um, I do think that no matter what kind of practitioner you are, you need to connect to the earth.
Mhm.
Like you live here because it's part of this system, and like it's the best example to learn how energy works. How like if you sit there and just listen and just pay attention, it's the best example to learn how these things work. Learn about nature and the how nature works. That's I think
Yeah.
is like the biggest foundation. And then learn about how energy works. And the best way to do that is by trying to move it and by trying to shift it and change it, like just getting your hands dirty right away instead of being afraid that you're going to hurt anything, because most likely like you're not going, you end up like ruining your life, if you're just trying to ground, or like center
Yeah.
or whatever, protect, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to ruin my life because I shifted my energy wrong. No, the odds of that happening, I want to say, are pretty much zero.
No, the results are only really going to be positive. If you learn how the elements interact with each other, you will discover so much about the world around you and about yourself. And so like, it's just those really simple things. Learn about how the elements interact and know where the moon is. And like, you're 1,000 times witchier than even some people who call themselves witchy, if you consistently do those things.
Yes. Well, and I also think like just like actually practicing, that sounded really mean. Like actually practicing compared to there are people that are just like, oh, I'm super spiritual, and then like they'll call themselves witchy, but then don't set up protections around their home, or like
They don't actually do the things.
Yeah, you don't do the thing.
Yeah.
You don't do the thing. And maybe you might know a lot about the thing, but like that's kind of like me like learning again about like, I read all the books about karate. Does that mean I know how to actually do it? No. I don't know what my form is not going to be. And neither are my punches or kicks, they're not going to be strong because I've never fucking done it. But I know a lot about it. It's which is valuable to a point, but like, what's the point of having the knowledge if you're not going to use it? There's no point.
Yeah. And so I would say in magic, there's theory and then there's praxis, right? Like, magic is something you have to experience. It is in the doing, because the theories that we have, they're just theories. It can be the most eloquent theory. In fact, Peter Carroll has this down to a mathematical formula. He has an actual mathematical formula for magic, and it's fascinating. And I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm saying it's a theory. But the doing of magic and then the getting results of it, that's not a theory. Mm-hmm. That's experience, right? Yeah. And if you can't have just this side, you've got to, this is so much more important. Right. This is important-ish and it's cool, but you could actually have, and many people, most magical practitioners throughout history were all the doing. The theory stuff is like pretty new. Yeah. We're talking about quantum physics and this, that, and the other thing, but like for the majority of time, it's just like, do the thing, do the dance, and then the thing happens. That's it. Well, and I mean, like you, like look at any folk practice or any like shaman work around the world, anywhere. It's like, they're just doing, they're doing and they're listening. I think that's a big piece, is like, a lot of us want to just do. And like, we want answers, but you're not sitting and listening. And again, it was probably Jason Miller, but I'm not sure if he was saying if casting spells or saying prayers is speaking to spirit, then meditating is listening. You need to listen. Do I like meditating? No, I hate it, but it's really, really important. And like if you ask so many practitioners who are like shamans and people who are folk practitioners, like who are like work within villages, they've asked them like, well, how did you know that this plant is medicinal for this, or this bark, if you do all these different steps to it, there's this whole system that it has this result, and all of their answers they always go, the spirits told me. Mm-hmm. Yep. And like they don't have the equipment to like scientifically figure out and do the equations or whatever. They've just known because they do and they listen. So yeah, I personally it's interesting to hear you say you hate meditation, because I love it so much. I get like addicted to it. Like I'll meditate for like 2 fucking hours if I could. I can't, I don't have that time, but I would. Right. Because I love that listening aspect, because I'm lazy. I'm so lazy. I'm a double Leo. I don't have to do anything. I can just sit in my reclining chair. Oh my God. That's okay. So I think
that was a very, very broad, vague thing for me to say that I don't like meditation. I don't, because like in like that first thing that you think about with meditation where you sit and do nothing,
Yeah.
right? Like I my brain does not shut the fuck up. Like
Mhm.
I carry around this little journal with me everywhere because my brain cannot shut the fuck up. And if like there's like this thing, I put it in this journal and at least that thought is out of my head for a second, but then there's more and I can never stop it and it drives me insane. However,
Totally.
um when I'm like taking a walk and I don't know, like it doesn't feel like I'm meditating because I'm not like trying to be quiet or focused. Like I'm just taking a walk,
Mhm.
and I feel like I'm connecting to like plant spirits and local spirits a lot easier that way, but I'm not focusing on like, okay, be quiet so I can listen to them, you know? Or if I'm like doing some kind of craft or things like that, that's different. But I envy people who can just sit there and just not. I don't know how you do it.
Well, I'll tell you how I do it is I use audio. I use binaural beats. It really helps. I can't do it otherwise. I need
Okay.
assist meditation music, something, drums,
Yeah. Something.
something, some kind of sound that I can put my focus on. Otherwise, I have the exact same problem as you. And that's a really good example of what I was saying earlier, right? Because if you if the goal of meditation is to quiet your inner mind,
Mhm.
the problem is that's your goal. Okay. And
Yeah.
so you have this
So you're
goal. So
already
you're going
thinking
to
about that.
insist that you do this, then you're resisting it happening because then you're going to be thinking about how you shouldn't be thinking.
Yeah.
And then you just drive yourself crazy.
The one that works best for like I still do it, even though I hate
Mhm.
it. I still do it. Just not one of my favorite things. One of my favorite things is either if I have a mantra, I can focus on that,
Mhm.
or it's just breathing. It's just like the
Yeah.
because I'm a very like sensory person. So
Mhm.
like anything that I can think about, like, okay, like how I'm sinking into my chair or my feet on the ground or like the breath. So I can focus on that and it doesn't have to be a thought. It's more
Yes.
of like
Totally.
something,
A
or like the
sensation.
way,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a sensory person. So that helps me a lot. If I had to just sit and be in complete silence and like I wasn't like allowed to like focus on those things, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
That's the only way I could do it.
It's
But
deeply uncomfortable. I
yeah.
definitely feel like focusing on the sensation of breathing is a really good trick.
Mhm.
That one helps a lot of people.
Yeah.
But then also, there's a point in meditation where like you're really getting something cool out of it. And until
Yeah.
if you're not getting that, and you don't always get it either. Sometimes I'll meditate for like 15 minutes and I'm like, oh fuck this, like because I can't do it. But when you
Right.
can and it goes well and you get some cool information, like that's rad.
It is cool. Yeah, like when you what is it called? Also, I'm also not a runner, but the runner's high. Like when
Yeah.
you're running and you're finally you like kind of like get over this hill of exhaustion and just like you're almost about to give up, but then you like get over this little tiny hill and all of a sudden you get this like high of like this is incredible, like the dopamine, whatever. I feel like it's kind of like that, where once you're like there and you're like, whatever, and then you just get over it, and all of a sudden you start like, oh, this is why we meditate. Oh my God, like I'm
Yeah.
connected, like I'm like tapping in. That's a
Yes.
completely different sensation. Which I love that part. I just don't like the initial
Yeah.
meditation.
Yeah. And that part is something that, for me, I got good at it fast.
Yeah.
And so I'm really lucky in that way. I will never in my life experience a runner's high. That ain't fucking happening.
Yeah,
I'm not
I
running. I
and
no.
listen, I have before and I still don't like running. I will never do it. Never again.
Yeah.
So,
I definitely on my giant to-do list of ways to constantly, like I'm trying so hard to always just be improving my life bit by bit. Daily exercise is something that's been on my to-do list for the last 2 decades. I will get there.
yeah.
It will happen. This is going to be the year.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it just depends on the kind of exercise. Like it has to again, like it's a separate practice. Like it has to connect to you, you know?
yeah, and again, I'm extraordinarily lazy. Like it's just a fact. It's something I really need to get over. Um, well, gee, oh god, right, we're like almost an hour and a half already. Any last ideas you want to put out there for people about incorporating magic into their everyday life?
I think just like the only piece of advice is just look at the pieces of your life that you can already enchant. Like, don't add anything, just
Yeah.
just make it magical. Showers, walks in the morning, coffee, like cooking, everything, whatever. Like the hobbies that you have, just use those and make them witchy. You don't have to like add this whole ritual. I think that's the biggest misconception. That's my
I
only last piece.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just try to in everything you do, find a sense of connection in it, and
Mhm.
allow yourself to have that instead of, because I know that at a point in life, I was so skeptical and so atheistic that even when I did feel that, I'd be like, no, that's not real.
Yeah,
Don't
you just
don't
shut it
don't
down.
do that to yourself,
Yeah, let yourself have that. Yeah.
totally. All right,
Mhm.
Olivia, thank you so much for being on the show. This was an awesome conversation. I mean, I had a bunch of questions written down we didn't even get to because
Oh,
it just flowed
sorry.
so well. No, it's fine. It's great. Yeah, thank you so much.
Of course. Well, that just means I can come back. So,
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, it was awesome talking to you. Again, thank you, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.
sounds good. See ya.
Bye, everybody.